I'm delighted to be able to introduce Yigit Karanfil, who is the Design Technology Manager from HOK, which is a multinational design firm, head office in St. Louis, US, has offices all over the world, I think 2,000 employees. Yigit looks after all design technology for the firm in Canada, so he covers multiple offices here. And I've known him for a number of years, and he's worked at some major firms across Canada, Dialogue, IBI, H.H. Angus, and he's in my opinion, one of the brightest technical minds in the design world right now. And he's now joined HOK, which is a leader in VDC and BIM, and certainly broken a lot of ground. We're early adapters of technology, so really great to have you with us, and I appreciate you taking the time. And just a reminder to everybody to utilize the Q&A tab to type in your questions, so we can get those published and out to the rest of the gang to see. And then we'll go through the questions at the end when we get back to the Q&A. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. And right now, just we're looking at a black screen, so I think you got to hit share screen before we get going. But really appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Tom. So today's presentation is going to be 3 levels of design collaboration. And let's see, how do I continue this? There we go. So, well, Tom already presented me. I look a bit different now. As he mentioned, I'm the Design Technology Manager at HOK for Canada. And I've worked with multidisciplinary BIM for a number of years now. And I've been an active member of CanBIM's Design and Engineering think tank for, I believe, 5 years now. So today we're going to be talking about what is collaboration, first of all, because, I mean, theoretically, we all should know this now, but I think a lot of software marketing has been straying us from what this actually is. And then what are the metrics for effective collaboration? So how can we assess collaboration? Like, is our process working or not? And then we're going to get into the levels of collaboration, such as it means of their effectiveness and the methods, what tools we use and how do we use them. And we're going to discuss how do we find the right solution for our projects. So first of all, what is collaboration? So literally by the dictionary meaning, let me hide this small pop-up first. There we go. So it is a situation of 2 or more people working together to achieve the same thing. And I guess what we keep kind of forgetting here is people working together. That in essence is collaboration, regardless of the tools or methods you utilize. And that's the end goal, is just to work together to achieve something. And in our case, as we are designers, I mean, at least I am on the design side, the design collaboration is to work together to design a building. So we get inputs from architects, interior designers, engineers, landscape architects. So all these parties are trying to design something coherent, constructible, and that's going to be, that's going to spend millions of dollars to make a building. And I think the mistake that we keep making sometimes is just thinking that just putting some tools on top of this and just throwing some buzzwords and tools and just buying all these things is going to fix our problems, which I don't think it will. There are certain things we need to look at when implementing the tools, and just kind of assessing their purpose and just thinking on the long term for the collaboration process. So collaboration is not building information modeling. It's not a common data environment. It's not putting our models in the same place, or using cloud software, exchanging models, existing in the same environment. It's like just because myself and someone else are in the same office doesn't mean we're collaborating. And it's definitely not software. Those are all things that uh, support collaboration, just make it better. They are tools that will improve your collaboration process when you use them in the right way. So this is my criteria for evaluating a collaboration process and tools, basically. And this is partially what we will use today for each level that I have created just for the purposes of this presentation. I think the most important thing is to access to information. So that could be just two people talking together or emailing each other. And within that access, how easy it is to access the information and how accurate and up to date it is, how searchable it is really important now, I think, because we communicate a lot of things during the design process, and we need to be able to get back and look things up, or we need to be able to share that with multiple people. And centralization, I think, is a big point for not everything has to be in a single place, but using the tools in correct places and making sure that certain types of information is always findable in the same place makes it really, really easier to convey a message. Does it give you clear communication uh, when I'm getting into the nitty gritty of some complex building elements and uh, specific things in my design? How am I referring to them, and how clearly am I conveying that message? And I think historic data is very important. I think we all should be looking at our design and collaboration data and assessing how well we are doing in this sense. And just once you have the historic data about your collaboration, you can see what processes need improvement and which ones are working well. And then you can carry that forward, just implement your business plan, and plan forward to make it better in the future. And I think one of the most important things is collaborator participation and leadership. Is the leadership actually endorsing use of these tools and these methods? Are people actively engaging all these collaboration methods and tools? Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned, this is about people working together, and uh, without their participation, this doesn't amount to much. So these are the levels I have basically created. And yes, these are mostly arbitrary. I basically just classified them by the amount of information they carry and how they are conveyed, and how effective they are. So I just classified this into three levels. Level one being phone, email, and in person communication. And level two is using live cloud services and online communication. And level three is integrating BIM data into your collaboration, because BIM data just, I mean, we have a lot of BIM data, but we don't always use it efficiently, and it can actually improve your processes a lot. So we're going to start with level one, phone, email, in person. So, and just to clarify, I am not really discounting any of these methods. They all have their time and place, and we're just going to go through them and review what are their strengths and what are their weak points. So the most basic form of communication that we practice all the time is in person. We talk to people all the time, whether it's regarding a project we're working on or something else we're doing in our daily lives. So there are a lot of practical things about talking to someone. Obviously, it is fast, it's efficient for the most part. You can just kind of, if you're in the same office, you can just walk up to someone and start talking to them, and you will be able to get your answer relatively quickly. Of course, the pitfall is that if the person you're trying to communicate is in another office, they need to travel to your office to be able to do this. And the serious issue with just talking to someone is there is no it just between those people that have talked, so it doesn't create any searchable data and it doesn't create any records unless you uh, transcript that speech or take meeting minutes, which is just extra effort that you need to spend to have a record of that conversation. But of course, one really good thing about in-person communication is it's great for building relationships, and it I think really matters in a collaboration environment. And those relationships you build actually can make you collaborate better in the future. So we're all human after all, and speaking to someone in person definitely helps you, relate to them more and have a better business relationship in the future. And the other component in level one is phone, and phone is basically doing the same thing, but without being in the same place. You just use a device to call someone. The downside being, like, when you're in person, maybe you can use a board or a piece of paper to sketch something, but that's not possible over the phone. And of course, by phone, I'm just talking about the kind of traditional phone in the last 25 years with the introduction of mobile phones. And especially now we have smartphones, which are essentially internet capable computers in our pocket. They're not really phones anymore. So I'm talking about just a traditional phone in the traditional sense. Today, we either mostly have cell phones or actually just soft phones. Like for instance, I don't use a physical phone at the office except my cell phone. I have a soft phone, so the computer as a software, it can act like a phone, and I can just talk using my laptop instead of having this extra device. And of course, email, one of the great technologies that was introduced in late 90s. So it the nice thing about email is, well, it provides a written record of all the conversations. So whatever you send or receive by email is recorded, and that's great. But the problem is, once you try to access anything that was produced through email, I mean, searching your inbox starts to become a nightmare. Like, I mean, we all receive dozens, if not hundreds, of emails every day, and we start using some external software to file them. And if one person forgets to file, you might be missing some crucial information. It becomes a serious mess, and historical data is very hard to get because the data fields you have in an email is like from, to, copy, and the body of the text basically. uh, you maybe need an AI to really analyze that data and sort it so you can get some sort of good historical data out of it. So um, it really becomes a hurdle to collect data from email on the long run, and just getting back to it and searching things can become an issue. And sending files with attachments seem like a good idea sometimes, but it's very easy for these files to get outdated. Somebody sends you a PDF, but, well, it's 2 weeks old and there's no way of you knowing that. So it can cause other issues that are solvable by some of the cloud services today, and we'll get into that shortly. So I wanted to give some examples of how email, like using emails for sending information and collaboration, can cause issues. And this is an example of a proposal workflow. Your marketing coordinator wants to get this proposal out to the client, and they send this proposal WIP document. So they, of course, need input from design technology, from architecture, interior design, and project manager. So what do? They just attach this to an email and send it to all of them. And of course, the next step is they all create their own Word files and just kind of name them in all these different wacky ways. Some of them have like this copy, and there's like finals, and all that sort of stuff. And they email it back to you. So now basically marketing coordinator has 4 files they have to stitch together, except some of them revise their files and have extra ones. Now they have to stitch together 6 files into a coherent document in the file on the server. So this is a massive hurdle, and it's really hard to keep track of things doing this. Another example of this, let's say we have a project, we're trying to coordinate the models across the disciplines. So the electrical designer sends a message to mechanical designer saying, well, this diffuser is clashing with a lighting fixture. Can you move the diffuser? But then that mechanical designer is no longer on the job anymore and says, well, who's working on this? Like, just I'm on another project, to the engineer. And then the engineer, because he knows that there's some change coming up and the designer doesn't know this, asks the architect, well, has a change in the ceiling layout been implemented yet? And because now basically after 3 emails, we are kind of asking the right question, whether this should happen or not. And the architect says, no, please hold off. So this took us 4 emails to get to this point, and we've all spent a few minutes. Looks minor, but multiply this by several hundred on a scope of project, and it's a serious productivity loss. So after these, evaluating level 1, we can see some pitfalls. Ease of access to information. While these tools are easily accessible to everyone, everybody has them. We all have mouths, we all have emails, phones, but just accessing the right and updated information is the challenge here. So it's not all that great. Keeping things like just being out of the loop takes only one person not copying you on an email. And searchability, while it's possible, is just really not great. And the centralization of the information is a bit of a mess. Just kind of once you file your emails, it's really hard to look after, and different information is just going to spread all over the place, most likely, because not everybody receives the same emails. And clearness of the communication, while it can be okay, there are ways to improve this, and I think that's the BIM data portion of this, so we will get that. And historic data is almost non-existent. It's really hard to process the information from these methods. So with this, we're going to move to level 2, to cloud services. So the nice thing about cloud services is they centralize things at a location where everybody can access, and it becomes much more streamlined in many ways. So I think one of the things in the last, I'd say, 10 years that has really improved and changed the way we communicate are those cloud-based communication tools like Microsoft Teams, Google Suite, Slack. So these are all tools that integrate a couple of services together and make it into a really nice package where you can find most of the information in one place. Centralization of that communication is really crucial, because if while you can have private conversation, if some information needs to be public, it's really easy to make it public and accessible through those either instant messaging, and also you can share the files on the cloud and in some cases edit them at the same time, and that's a big advantage. And also we're seeing that online meetings are moving to those platforms where, while there are other teleconferencing software, they tend to maybe integrate it to these platforms as well, and you can just kind of have them all in one place, and you can share screens, which gives you much more flexibility in means of visual aids, and you can record your meetings or presentations. And we're even seeing actually things like where uh, your meeting is being transcribed. So you can actually search the transcript of a auto-generated transcript of a video to find the section of that you're looking for, instead of just kind of fast forwarding blindly. This is a much better find of actually finding something in a verbal some verbal communication. All right. So, and at HOK we're using Microsoft Teams, so I'm just going to use it as an example. But again, the workflow itself is the important thing, I think, not the tool itself. So, let's look at that proposal workflow again using Microsoft Teams. So we have Microsoft Teams on everyone's computer, and the marketing coordinator just drops the Word file to Teams and basically shoots a message to the team asking them to edit the file. And all the team has to do is just open that file and edit it, and all the changes are reflected, and they can start commenting on it. They can start marking things up, and everything is real time, so much smoother. So that whole hurdle just became a kind of two-step process now. And if necessary, I can even just call an external partner to this. Let's say if I'm competing for a project with a joint venture partner, I can actually even invite them into the project and have the externals also, do some edits on the document. And of course, I can supplement this using chat functions and online meetings. So if I need to, communicate something about the proposal, everything can go to a chat window where everybody can see the dialogue, and I can just have an online meeting. I can transcript that, so it's much easier to keep things all in one place, and all the information is accessible by everyone. If I record that meeting, someone who's missed the meeting can go back and watch that. So another example of model coordination on a platform like that, maybe I have a team for a project and I have a coordination channel. So I can just tag someone on the channel and asking the mechanical engineer, like the electrical engineer asks a mechanical engineer to move a fixture, and the architect seeing this immediately responds, we didn't update the ceiling plans yet, please hold off. And that's the end of the conversation, because this was a public channel, and it was posted there. The architect, who needs to really stop this in its tracks, was able to intervene to this situation immediately. So, of course, in things like model coordination, I mean, chat is a bit of an improvement over email, but I think the real deal here is also adding some visual aids. So software like Bluebeam Studio and I mean many other online markup tools allows us to do this. So once I start a Bluebeam Studio session, I can invite all the other parties into this, and all the markups are visible in real time, and any design issues, any coordination issues are communicated pretty easily. So whenever I start pointing things out in the PDFs, all the parties have immediate access to it and they can respond to that. So that makes it much easier to find as well. One cloud tool we're using is Smartsheet for quality control and task management, actually. So this is a web-based spreadsheet and task management tool. It is actually not a construction or design tool at all. It's just online spreadsheets, but it's pretty good. You can tie the spreadsheets to each other and create dashboards with that. So we have basically customized this enough that you can use it for quality control of the projects using some standard checklists, building our project schedule there, and just track everything that's happening in the project using these online tools. And it's been working out pretty well for us so far. So, example of how this works is the project team has access to things related to project. This could be the QC checklist, our schedule, our design RFIs, and all this information is basically feeding a project dashboard. So this is basically a place where I can see the data about the project, where I can see how many open RFIs there are, how many things in the checklist that were supposed to be completed are not completed, what items on my schedule are overdue. So a project manager can open this page and have full control over what's happening, and they can ask the team to either complete overdue tasks or maybe postpone some of them, and it becomes a really good source of information for managing the information in each moment. Then to take this further, we basically carry that information to our office dashboard, where you can just kind of look at it from a higher level. You can see how your office is doing in general, and if the projects are proceeding as expected in their design process. And then one level higher is the company dashboard, where you can have a excuse me, where you can see company-wide how the projects are going on. So there's some pretty good data collection combined with strict quality control processes, and this gives us good data and pretty good overview of the projects. And also, we've thanks to the functionality in the tool itself and the customizations we made, we can actually send automated reminders. So you have your tasks and your due dates in your schedule. I mean, this is a grossly oversimplified graphic, of course, just to focus on this. But basically, when a due date is hit, it can send automated emails to participants, and actually it can even bug them over Microsoft Teams, so that this process will remind people to get their tasks done. So overall, when we look at level 2, we have a much better way to access the information, and it is mostly it is up to date, but the accuracy of the information and what it can contain can be a bit better. That's going to be the next level. It is far more searchable, and if you do things right, the data can be better. It's much more centralized. Everybody has access to these platforms, and the clear communication is just lacking that model component and like some more specific things in the project, I think. But also historic data can be pretty valuable, and it's much easier to go through that and maybe extract some things as well. So level 3 is basically BIM data. And just to clarify, it doesn't necessarily live outside of level 1 and 2. BIM data contributes to the other processes that you already have in place. So basically, what BIM data gives us is better data accuracy. So you can refer to some very specific items, very specific things, and associate them with the things on the other platforms. You can have issues and comments directly associated. There are more real-time coordination opportunities, and you can supplement the BIM data you already have with other information. And one thing I want to really say here is not all data has to be contained in models. Some things it just doesn't really make sense to bury it into the model. It might be better to link the data in some ways, but we shouldn't be really using the BIM models outside of their purpose. So, of course, one of the big advantages is now with the platforms we have, we can actually have the models living in the same space. So ArchiCAD's BIM Cloud and Autodesk's Revit Server or BIM 360 Docs or ProjectWise, all these tools do is just contain your model in the same space. And again, this isn't necessarily a collaboration method because it's just having the models in the same space. It's great. It's quicker to see what each other is doing and adapt to that. But at the end of the day, these are just providing you a platform to contain your models. Or at least in some cases, like there are coordination modules, but I'm thinking of the, I guess, classical sense as in just kind of containing models in the cloud. And in means of model coordination, so I'm going to go through the different things to show the difference between a kind of screenshot, the different methods of coordinating the model. So we already talked a bit about kind of markups and PDFs. So screenshotting something and emailing it or marking it up on a live PDF, it gives us a visual aid. So we can approximately understand where the issue is, and it will basically we see, like, let's say if a door is the issue, I'm going to be able to see the door here, and because this door has a tag, I can say, okay, it's door 103 that has issues, so I can go and find that door and try to fix that. And carrying this to the next level is using something like a BCF data. So that's going to carry things further because it will tell me exactly which element has the problem. So there is less searching actually. It could give me element IDs or there could be some switchback tools, but there is basically no question which element is the problem or elements are the problem. And I can actually start assigning this to different disciplines, saying, well, this is a door, so architecture should be solving this. And I can add comments. The type of issue is a clash, is a design issue, and when it's due. So all that information is contained in this open format. So that gives me much more sortable data, so I can actually, like, having all these fields in my collaboration process, I can look at, say, 5,000 BCF issues at the end of the project and see easily who had the most tasks assigned, what type of elements were causing the most issues, at what phases of the project I had the most issues. So it's all of a sudden you have so much more data that is sortable in an easier way. So this is great. And to take things to the next level here, well, this BCF data you would just either email or put it in some like OneDrive or Dropbox. If you can have it in a not, well, most of these tools work with BCF, the others work in a similar way basically, but they more or less all contain same types of data. Now basically you don't need to send any BCF files. You can actually have them contained in the same environment. You mark something up, there's all this data, plus everybody has immediate access. And I think this is the ultimate model collaboration workflow in means of coordinating your models. Now, I did mention not containing everything in the same place. I'm running slightly short on time. I'll try to be quick. One tool we use is Drophus. So Drophus is an external database that can talk to Revit. And there are multiple different workflows, and there's other software that you can use. It doesn't have to be Drophus and Revit. This is just what we're using currently. But basically, you would plan your rooms, your equipment, furniture, all in Drophus. So you first start with your planning data in Drophus and push part of this to Revit. So you can create the rooms and equipment that are same in Revit, in Drophus. The room data you created in Drophus gets pushed to Revit. And then any revisions you have from Revit, you can actually push the data back to it. So it is a two-way transition. Depending on your requirements, you could do either. And then I start planning my furniture and equipment, placing those in Revit, and then I can ask Drophus, does Revit have all the furniture and equipment that I planned for? And it becomes a verification tool that measures how I'm doing compared to my initial planning. And once we go through this process, there's a lot of non-graphic information that can be added to those like rooms or furniture equipment, and I can start pushing those to Drophus and create my FF&E and room data sheet that reports using Drophus. And none of this has to, while it can, if it actually has an impact on my design and if there's any benefit in including them in the model, we can push them back. But most of that actually can just be published from Drophus. It's still attached to the rooms and elements when necessary. So it can establish the relationship between them, but they don't need to live in the same place. So looking at level 3 in general, access to information is much easier once you carry these to the cloud, and you can get much more accurate and specific items. Searchability is definitely better with the if you use the tools right, keep assigning things, and you can centralize your information and communicate much better by using more specific model data instead of screenshots. Not saying screenshots are bad, it's just BCF and similar tools are better. And getting historic data from all these tools when they're used right is much better. So in the light of all these, how do we find the right solution for our project? So there are a few. We talked a lot about the tools, but haven't really touched on, well, how do I actually apply these to my project, or do I even need to? So there are a lot of other factors to consider in a collaboration process, of course. And first of all is the project size and complexity. While all these advanced methods and setups and different things, it's just, if it's going to cost you half the project time, it might not be the right solution, because you don't want to spend time setting up protocols and solutions that take more time than the actual project work. As the project size and complexity increase, not only there is room to build those tools into your process, they become very necessary, and actually the time you spend to establish these far exceed the time savings far exceed the time and money you spend on these tools. If you have a smaller project, probably the simpler processes that you're familiar with and your consultant is familiar with is better. There's the question of infrastructure. So you might, you got to consider if your consultants actually have access to the same tools that you do, because you might be using Teams, your consultant is using Slack, and maybe you have to establish how this is going to go through, what's going to be cost effective. Thankfully, a lot of vendors allow license to be owned by a single party, so you could have access. So we have access to Trimble Connect, for instance, and we set up all our projects and we share files through that. Our consultants or clients don't need to get a license on their own. So there are nice things like that, and platforms like Teams or Slack are integrating a lot of the other technologies into their platform, so you can actually connect them to some extent. And I think the leadership buy-in and consistent use of tools is one of the most important things, because if you don't have some buy-in and usage from the project management or leadership level, it becomes really hard to get people to use these tools properly. So let's say I'm using I'm using BCFs, just sending BCFs over the cloud or maybe by email to communicate design issues. If I don't know, 3 of my designers are just kind of shooting emails out there, well, then all my data is skewed. It's just we can't really catch all the issues, and the data is not accurate. So everybody using the same tools for the same purposes is really important. That consistency really brings the success of your project. And another thing that really needs to be considered is how the project is contracted, and what's the power structure, and what's your relationship with the parties you're working with. Because in some cases you have maybe like an integrated like an IPD project, you have a joint venture, or maybe people working in the same office, so they're working for the same entity, so they don't have a conflict of interest when it comes to an issue like well, if I spend 2 hours on this, you're going to save 4 hours, but I don't want to because that's not in my fee. So that definitely impacts the collaboration process and even discourages it sometimes. And by power structures, I mean basically who's hiring whom. So if someone is hiring you, well, you don't always want to go against what they're saying. So you don't really express yourself very vocally, maybe in some cases. And trust and ongoing relationships, I think, matter too, because an entity you work with all the time is going to be maybe more open with you. If you have a good ongoing relationship, just kind of people tend to be more collaborative and help each other out when necessary. So all these are more kind of business side of things, and the other kind of human factors definitely impact the collaboration process, and it would be a mistake to really to ignore these when trying to implement the process. And just I have 2 minutes left, and just wrapping this up. Another thing to consider is the client requirements. There are some cases where the client might stipulate really harsh restrictions that's avoiding you to just avoiding you from communicating with other parties, or there are sometimes these secure projects you basically need to do in a cave without an internet, and you simply are not allowed to use these tools. That's definitely going to impact your process, but it's probably a necessary sacrifice for the security of the project. And with that, that's all I had to say, and I'll leave it to Tom.
Excellent. Thank you. We are running a little bit late here, but maybe I'll just ask a couple of questions. Really interesting presentation. Nice to talk through the different levels. I'm not sure I caught it, but in the sort of like person-to-person communication, have you found in your experience that the so-called like big rooms are effective where you bring a whole team into the same environment? Does that facilitate the communication?
I mean, it's a more human process. I'd say having people in the room once at least at the beginning of a project, especially if it's a big one, it's a good idea. It does. I think it rather than the communication in the room, I think it improves the relationship moving forward and how you communicate. Sorry.
It builds camaraderie across the team, right? I mean,
exactly. I think so, and it just impacts the future of it a bit more positively, I think.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about scalability with the different products, and you did mention like 360 Docs and ProjectWise. I would assume that a firm as large as HOK is utilizing a lot of different platforms concurrently, simply because you have so many different types of work and probably owner or partner demands that use different products. So do you have experience in these different products, and what do you find works the best for what types of projects?
I used almost everything I've shown here over there. The exception being the BIM cloud on ArchiCAD. I'd say most of the time, having the models live in the same environment is a bit overrated. I'll say it might be an unpopular opinion, but
Right.
that's just what I think.
I'm up
Um,
that too, actually, but carry on.
yeah. So one thing is this is really important when you have to work in the same model. Which we had those cases. Let's say if there are other consulting architects and we're trying to connect and do everything in the same set, then it's pretty important. Otherwise, with the amount of automations we have, we are mostly just sharing our models through services like Trimble Connect. That's our primary one. So we can just kind of just automate the upload, download of a lot of things, and we can do them quite often through that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And that's a relatively new platform, right? So why Trimble Connect? Did you evaluate a lot of different options and ended up with that one as the most superior, or what influenced that decision?
it has some. Well, we've been moving to their platforms recently, relatively. Honestly, I wasn't in the decision process. It was a bit before my time,
Mm-hmm.
but it has IFC support. That's a pretty good thing. So if a
Cool.
client needs to access the models and they don't have anything to open it with, they can actually just open a Chrome browser and view the models. So that's one good thing. And it allows us to do part of our automations, such as it has tools that can synchronize your folders. So I'd say those are the strong suits, and it is geared up more towards like construction, unlike something like Box, Dropbox, or the like.
So all of these systems require a bit of a culture of discipline, right? Like no matter what product you use, people have to use it correctly. They have to store the information in the correct location. They have to tag it or name it correctly. How do you drive that culture of discipline while sort of maintaining the freedom that's necessary to do the creative work and allow people to be inspired to do their job, right, rather than force standards upon them? I mean, there's a bit of a balance there, right?
Well, I think in the first presentation, Yuri talked about this a bit, and I totally agree. It's the leadership buy-in, and basically, I mean, there is like, I mean, I myself am just kind of providing constant training to people so that they are able to use these tools. So all these like in-person trainings and good documentation of how things should be used or when they should be used. I think it. So I'd say people having access to trainings uh, is pretty important,
Yep.
and so that doesn't become an obstacle or an excuse. And other thing is definitely leadership buy-in. If leadership is supporting these tools and how things are done, then you have a better chance of implementing these successfully.
Cool. Okay, well, we're a little bit over time, so we probably should get to the next session. But really appreciate your presentation, and thanks for making the time for us today. And these presentations are recorded, so they'll be available after. And I'm sure if you have questions, you would be happy to take those questions offline. So thank you very much, and I'll see you at the next session.
Thank you.